Hello everyone, good morning. So welcome to the program design tool training. Okay, so this particular tool was developed to ensure that there is constructive alignment during the program development and review processes. Before we look at the tool, let's look at what are the considerations when we are constructively aligning our curriculum. The structural framework for OBE is that the outcome must connect with the teaching method and also the assessment method. So if we look at the left-hand side, the misaligned architecture means the intended outcome, the teaching strategy, as well as the assessment method is not properly aligned. So what we want to do is that whenever we are developing our program, the intended outcome must be first formulated, followed by the assessment method, and then the teaching strategy. The six-stage alignment sequence is that the program learning outcome must be first determined. When we are developing the program learning outcome, we have to determine what is the dominant domain, cognitive, psychomotor, or affective, that is going to address that particular program learning outcome. So for each of the program learning outcome, we must then determine what are the causes that contribute to that program learning outcome, followed by the course learning outcome formulation, the assessment method determination that will enable us to assess whether the student has indeed achieved that course learning outcome. And then we must formulate the teaching and learning strategy that will guide the student towards the assessment method as well as the achievement of the course learning outcome. And finally, we will allocate what is the student learning time required for the students to achieve these learning outcomes. So this is the first part where we formulate the program learning outcome and we determine whether it belongs to the cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, or affective domain. And we will then align all the contributing causes to each of the program learning outcome. The once the courses are mapped, then the course learning outcome is then developed. So each course learning outcome must have a verb, skill set, and context. The verb that is being used must be aligned to the domain of which the program learning outcome has been mapped to. So for example, if program learning outcome 1 addresses cognitive domain, which is aligned to C1, knowledge and understanding in the MQF learning clusters, then the course learning outcome, the verb that is used must also come from cognitive domain. Okay, so let's say the program learning outcome, for example, program learning outcome number 3, which is aligned to C3A, practical skills, belongs to the psychomotor domain. So the course learning outcome, if let's say it is mapped to program learning outcome 3, the verb that is used to construct the course learning outcome should come from the psychomotor domain. This is what we call as the initial stage constructive alignment. Once the courses are mapped, then we have the course to PLO mapping, and then we will determine what is the specific assessment method that would enable us to achieve the course learning outcome, or to assess whether the student has achieved the course learning outcome. And then finally, only we formulate the teaching and learning strategy that will allow the students to expand, to be able to do the assessment as well as achieve the learning outcome. So PLO, and then we do the course mapping, and then we formulate the CLO, the assessment strategy, teaching strategy, and finally, we go to the student learning time. So if we look at the comments from panels before this, a lot of the comments addresses the constructive alignment issues, such as the verb that is being used is not aligned to the domain or the skills of the MQF, the program learning outcome is mapped to, the assessment method is not appropriate for the domain, and then there are construction of CLO or PLO with multiple verbs. Okay, so these are the things we want to avoid. So in order to do this, we have come up with the program design tool. Okay, so welcome to the program design tool. And as you can see, we have 3 sheets here available in each program design tool. There are other sheets that I have hidden in this particular file. I request that you guys do not amend any information in the other sheet, because if any information is amended in the other sheets, then it will affect all the formulas that has been keyed in into this particular sheet. So I kindly request, please do not edit any information in the other sheets that is feeding the data to this particular 3 sheets. Okay, so the first thing that we need to pay attention to over here in this tool is the MQF qualification level of the program in the program educational objective constructor sheet. So if we can see, we can choose, I allow each program developer to choose the MQF qualification level of the program. Why this is important? Because when we are designing a program, we need to adhere to the MQF level of descriptor for each of the qualification level. So in the MQF program, they have given in the appendix what is the minimum level that needs to be achieved according to different qualification level. So for example, if we are developing a bachelor's program, a qualification level 6, then if you scroll down to the right-hand side, we can see that the minimum level for each of the domain is displayed over here. This minimum level is based on the Malaysian qualification framework, which means the cognitive level at the time of graduation of the graduates should be at C4. For psychomotor should be at P4 and affective should be at A3, minimum level. We can go higher depending on the profile of our students, right? So, but it's usually advisable to set a minimum level. Now, moving on to the program educational objective development. So once here we have selected bachelor's level 6, we can now see that this column will activate, right? But this column, the drop-down option will only appear for level 6. It will not appear for any other level because the level specified here is level 6. So we are constructing our PEO according to all the same MQF5 learning clusters, which is 11 skill in specific sequential order, which is C1, C2, C3A, C3B, C3C, C3D, C3E, C3F, C3, C4A, C4B, and C5. Okay, so we have now selected these keywords. We are going to select the keywords based on each of these MQF learning clusters in specific sequence, moving from C1 to C5. Okay, so in this PEO, there are many different ways of formulating the PEO. We can either choose one dominant verb, even though we have combined multiple domains, or we can choose multiple verbs. It is entirely up to the program designer. So let's say, for example, in my PEO1, I would like to focus on the cognitive domain only. Okay, so generally, the cognitive domain, the MQF skill that is involved in the cognitive domain will be C1, C2, cognitive skills, and also numeracy skills. Okay, so numeracy skill would require cognitive component. So let's say I were to, these are the skills that I want to address in my PEO1. Now I have selected cognitive domain. So here we have already placed C4 as our minimum level. So over here we can select C4 as well, right? Now, once the C4 level is selected, this drop-down box will only provide verbs of cognitive domain at the C4 level. Okay, so for example, let's say I'm going to choose analyze. All right, so I'm going to formulate my PEO statement using the verb analyze, which is aligned to C4 level in the cognitive domain, including these three keywords: possesses knowledge, can provide services and solutions. Okay, so we can make it slightly larger so that we can see all the entire keyword. And then for C3E, adopts quantitative information for decision making. So once we have mapped the keywords, we can proceed to map the rest of the keyword as well. So we have to remember that one PLO is to be mapped to one PEO only. All right. So let's say, for example, the next one, I'm going to focus on the psychomotor domain. So I can choose over here based on this. The minimum level I need to achieve is P4 for bachelor level. So I'm going to select P4 over here, and I'm going to select one of the verb that sounds good. So I'm going to go with construct, and I want to choose the skills that reflects practical skills such as C3A. So we have to remember to select the skill in the same row, the keyword for the skill in the same row with the PEO that we are trying to map. So I'm going to select practical skill, digital skill, yeah, that's all. Digital skill, practical skill, and digital skill. So now I have mapped my psychomotor PEO to the PLO number 3 and also PLO number 6. All right. So after that, let's move on doing this, copying the same thing. I'm going to do affective domain now, and I'm going to choose A3 because the minimum level stated here is A3. So I'll be selecting A3, and then I'm going to choose commit, and I would like to go with the unmapped PLO. So I'm going to go with communication skill, interpersonal skill, and leadership skills. Okay. And then another PEO, I'm going to go with affective domain as well, A3. And then I'm going to choose the word adopt, and I want to proceed mapping with whatever that is left, which is C4A, C4B, and C5. Okay, so now what happened is we have already mapped all of our PEO against our PLO. If you see, whenever we select the keywords, the tick marks for PLO, PEO mapping will automatically appear over here. In this case, we only have PEO 1 to PEO 4. So we have marked PLO 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All PLOs has been mapped against the PEO statement. So moving on, we can key in what context this PEO is going to be adopted. So for example, if let's say I'm developing the program forensic science, I'm going to place here in the global context of forensic science field. Okay. And let's say for psychomotor, I'm going to say according to standard forensic science practice and procedures. For effective, I'm going to say, since this is collaboration, communication, and leadership, so I'm going to say with peers and stakeholders. And here is for engage lifelong learning, engage in, here should be, okay, there is something wrong with this keyword. I will amend this in the verb file, but don't worry, this should reflect entrepreneurial activity. And then I'm going to say this is for personal and professional development. So these are my contexts in which I want the graduates to be able to display their skills. So what we can do now is that either we can combine all of this by copying this entire row and then we can place in ChatGPT for it to formulate a sentence, or you can even formulate the sentence by yourself. So let's say, for example, if you were to do it, we can say analyze knowledge. Okay, knowledge providing services and solutions to industry using data-driven, evidence-based, uh, evidence-based, mm, evidence-based, sorry, analyze knowledge to provide analyze knowledge using data-driven, evidence-based services. Analyze knowledge using data-driven for evidence-based services and solutions to industry in the global context of forensic science field. So if we can see, all the keywords that were highlighted for these three skills are now placed inside the PEO. So when we map the PEO to the specific PLO, which carries the MQF domain or MQF learnings cluster, the keywords must be reflected explicitly in the program educational objective, program learning outcome, or even course learning outcome. So this method will ensure that all the keywords relevant to that skills that is being mapped to that particular PEO appears in the sentence. So we can do the similar practice for all of these four PEO statements. Okay, so moving on to the PLO constructor. PLO constructor works similar way to how the PEO constructor worked. So, but in here, we need to select the domain as well. So I'm going to select bachelor's level, which again will display the minimum level at the time of graduation, which is C4, P4, and A3. So now PLO 1 to 11, all the programs in UCSI which are going through review as well as newly developed program must adhere to the PLO 11 unless they are accredited by different bodies. If you are under MQA accreditation, you have to follow the MQF skill or MQF learning clusters. So we are going to start with PLO 1, which corresponds to C1. C1 is usually a cognitive domain. There is no options for this. C2, which is cognitive skill, is also of cognitive domain. Okay, here what we are doing is we are selecting what is the dominant domain for this particular skill. So let's say for C3A, which is practical skill, the dominant domain would obviously be psychomotor, and followed by, if let's say your program uses interpersonal skill as a soft skill, then this will become affective domain. And communication skill also generally falls under the affective domain. And then followed by digital skill. Digital skill can be either cognitive, psychomotor, affective. This is up to the program developer to decide. Okay, so I'm going to select psychomotor as for digital skill because students will be using the digital tools to do, to construct something or do something. So for here, numeracy skill, I'm going to select cognitive again because they need to do data analysis. For leadership and so on, I'm going to select affective domain. Okay, so in the context of forensic science, we are going to select the affective domain for the rest for PLOs. Okay, so over here we can do the same thing again, C4, P4, and A3. So if here is cognitive, then we can select C4, again C4, psychomotor, P4, affective, A3, A3, P4, and cognitive will be C4. And of course, all of these will be A3. Okay, so now that we have, sorry, it's better not to copy and paste because I'm afraid it might overwrite the formula. So let's just use the drop-down function. Okay, so now over here, the verb will also change based on the level that has been indicated over here, which is now, which is C4. So we can choose any one verb from here. We can choose another one verb from here, and then one from psychomotor. So affective, we are going to commit, we are going to choose, and then we are going to produce, we are going to categorize, and then we are going to commit, we are going to adopt, we are going to assume responsibility, we are going to commit. Okay, so it is not it is not a must that you must choose different verbs every time. So it is okay to choose the same verb multiple times. Okay, again, we display all the keywords that corresponds to this particular skill. So C1, C2, C3A, C3B, C3C. So if you notice, I'm going down one row, one skill in the specific sequence because each row will correspond to the one MQF skill, and one at each MQF skill, the sequence also we have to follow the sequence from C1 to C5. So if we can see all these keywords are now displayed, you can just make the box slightly bigger if you can't see the entire keyword. Okay, we can do the same for all. Okay, so now once we have all of the keywords that should be in our PLO statement, this is our verb, this is our PLO, and we have to again key in the context. So I'm going to put just in the global context of forensic science field. So just like what we did for the PEO constructor, now we can select all of these three keywords: contrast, in-depth knowledge in the global context of forensic science, and add in your own unique DNA of your program, and then you can formulate the statement. So when you're formulating the statement, please be careful not to include any other verb of any other domain, because it will then cause confusion when you are constructively aligning the CLO to the PLO as well as the assessment method. So it's always safer to keep to one verb, and then the keyword reflecting that PLO must appear, as well as provide a context for that particular program learning outcome. Okay, then you can just use this to formulate the statement. You can even use ChatGPT or any AI tool to formulate the statement using these three keywords in the specialty of your own program. Moving on to the CLO constructor, it also works the same way. We need to choose the qualification level, and then we will have the domain that is appear here. But it's just that at this time, because the course can be constructed at various different level. Only at year 4, usually the courses have to attain C4, P4, and A3, or year 3 at the time of graduation, the final year. However, each individual course may be at different cognitive levels. So we can always set here what is the level that we want to achieve for this particular course. So let's say this is a year 1 SEM 1 course, and I only want the students to understand. So I can just go for understanding, very basic P2 set, and then A2. So now what we can do is that first we have to select which is the PLO that we want to map for this CLO. So if let's say CLO1 is going to be mapped against PLO1, sorry. Okay, please don't erase this column, just replace the PLO. So this column will reflect whatever domain that we have selected over here in the column B. right, for each of these PLO. So this will ensure that your CLO is definitely constructed to the correct domain and the use of verb is correct to the specific domain stated at the PLO level. So now what we are going to do, we are going to select what is the PLO. Let's say, for example, I want to choose PLO3. I want to map CLO1 to PLO3. You can see that the domain has automatically changed to psychomotor. If I were to map it to PLO1, then it will change back to cognitive, similar to what we have mapped over here. So let's say my CLO number 2, I want to map to digital skill, which is PLO6. Then this will automatically change to psychomotor because over here we have stated psychomotor. And of course, let's say my third CLO, I would like to map it to numeracy skill. Then automatically this domain will reflect cognitive domain, which has been keyed in for numeracy skill over here. So at this point in time, I want to give communication skill, so it changed back to affective. And I only have 3 CLOs. So now let's see what is the level I want to set for my cognitive level. I chose C2 earlier, right? So I'm going to choose C2, P2, and A2. Again, we will choose the verb. This verb is all only C2 verbs, no verbs from any other domain. So we choose a verb. So I'm going to display and I'm going to choose comply. Okay, so if PLO1, we must select the keyword from PLO1 over here, which is C1. If PLO6, the mapping is PLO6 is C3D, digital skill. So the keyword for this the course learning outcome must be from digital skill. If PLO5, this is communication skill, then we have to follow communication skill. Please do not confuse why here it is stated 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, but here I'm choosing for PLO1, PLO6, and PLO5. These 6 indicates that this is for bachelor's program, level 6 of MQF qualification. So again, you'll be able to see the keywords displayed over here. You can make the box slightly larger to be able to view the entire keyword. You can key in the context as well as similar to other courses. Maybe this is for forensic biology, so or biological evidence. So I'm going to key in the context as biological evidence for forensic related cases or biological evidence analysis. Okay, and then I'm going to say communication to present to peers and stakeholders. Okay, so these are my contexts. In addition, because this is course learning outcome, the course learning outcome can be mapped to ESD competency, Education for Sustainable Development competencies. We have 8 competencies over here. And also UCSI values if you want to. So let's say, for example, my CLO1, I want to pair with anticipatory thinking, because to analyze biological evidence, the student should be able to have anticipatory thinking to know what techniques they want to use. Okay, and they want to do it with compassion because they are dealing with victims. Okay, they are dealing with human victims, so they must have compassion when they are doing the case analysis. So I'm going to key in both of these keywords over here, and then we can then select all of the keywords highlighted from the verb, the skill set, and then the ESD competency, the UCSI value, as well as the context, and formulate a sentence either using any AI tool or by yourself. We can do the same thing. It is this column Q and R, ESD competency and UCSI value is not compulsory, but this is in addition to the MQF mapping, the MQF guidelines that we have provided for the UG and the PG programs, undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Okay, the final component is that once this is done, we can also select the teaching and learning method for this CLO. All right. So we have given, we will be adding more teaching and learning method as well as the assessment method. So for example, here the assessment method, sorry, I think this is supposed to be teaching and learning. This is supposed to be assessment method. Sorry. Okay, so the assessment method, let's say I want to go with written examination for CLO number 1. And teaching and learning method is class discussion or interactive lecture. Okay, so maybe for the second one, the assessment method, I would like to go for we can go for role play or preparation task. Or here we can, and then here, since this is communication skill, if you see the assessment method appearing at this drop down level for the cognitive CLO is different. It's written examination, open book test, guided reflection, oral presentation, and so on. However, for the practical CLO, which is the psychomotor CLO, the assessment method now is different. It is pre-practical briefing, safety readiness, equipment setup checks, or role play. This is appropriate for a C2, P2 level CLO. So let's say I'm going to go with equipment setup tasks. And then the third one, if we see the level chosen here is the skill chosen here is communication skill, and the level is A2, and therefore the teaching and learning method will also be to foster the communication. Sorry, the assessment method will also be corresponding to the communication skill, which is, let's say it is role play participation. Okay, teaching and learning method will also be, let's say if here is equipment setup task, then what we have to do is instructor-led setup session. So instructor teaches first and then the student will be able to do. Over here, maybe we have class discussion and then the student will do role play participation. So if we see the entirety of the teaching and learning strategy and the assessment method is aligned to the specific domain as well as the level of Bloom, which is C2, cognitive domain is assessed by written examination and the teaching method is interactive lecture. So this will ensure that all of our courses are constructively aligned to the outcome-based education standard. All right. Thank you so much. If you have any questions,